This installation is an exploration of Belgrade. It is a machine for testing the forces and dynamics with and upon the city. How do these change the city? The frame displays ideological structures, key thinking, overarching perspectives in which the city lays. It changes in a static but its purpose continually supports all that happens within. The rods and the cogs are the found context. These are both random and a result of the past. They are the land, the river, the oxygen. They can be moved and used. The ropes and ties and pulleys are the forces. They are relationships and desires. They work both with and against each other to change the city. They are supported by ideology and both change and are changed by the people who interact. The blocks are the blocks of the city. They are tangible elements which reflect their own history and respond to events. Importantly, this machine is not a direct history of Belgrade, but explores a research process into the relationships and forces within the city during prominent events of interest. Day 1. World War I. The early 1900s saw alliances forming between countries with arguably stronger international political forces than ever before in history. After a rise in international tensions, World War I was triggered as Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo in 1914, with Serbia held directly responsible by the Austrian-Hungarians. This is the first bloc smashing to the ground. Serbia was both aided by but also tied into suggestion from Russia, thus also supported by France and Great Britain through alliances with Russia. These relationships helped but also restricted Serbia greatly. A rope is tied around the top forces on the city. This is not a force from the city itself and so is independent of the structure, but still has great impact. The accusations against Serbia were condemned by the Serbian government, who had an army already exhausted from Balkan wars. However, the war commenced. The first bombs were dropped in Belgrade on July 28, 1914. Fighting on the streets took place as the Serbs defended the city against the Austro-Hungarians and the Germans. The top-down forces tightened to demonstrate control of troops. Day 2. Yugoslavia and Socialism. Yugoslavia was formed after World War I, with Belgrade as its capital. From here onwards, the population grew rapidly, doubling between 1920 and 1930. People became engaged in the construction of their own housing and the formation of their own lives in a turbo style. Areas that were destroyed by bombs were reconstructed in a new way, influenced by international design, and the city grew outwards to accommodate its returning and new inhabitants. The broken blocks from the bottom of the machine are recast within fresh material to be suspended again alongside entirely new separate pieces. Some are hung from existing blocks as they rely on the pre-established infrastructure and systems. Socialism was adopted in Yugoslavia as the predominant ideology in the 1940s. The first red socialist strings are bottom up in the machine. Dissimilarly to other areas in Belgrade, socialism came as the result of a grassroots revolution and was not imposed upon the people. This allowed it to grow very rapidly with much support. The frame is painted red as the ideology takes over the Yugoslavian capital, and red strings appear from the top and the bottom as the city adopts more of the self-management ideologies that socialism engaged. Day 3. Criminality. Underground crime was common in Belgrade, particularly during the Yugoslavian wars of the 1990s. The country was not officially involved in the wars, but the chaos surrounding them invited criminals who had been previously exiled or working abroad, with an opportunity to return to the city and get a hold of weapons that were seized from the country borders. Furthermore, the Serbian mafia provided Serbs with a perceived escape from the economic turmoil of the time, induced by economic sanctions. The economic problems were catastrophic for many people. In the machine, this is explored through tying the key blocks to invisible strings. These are raised and then released with a crash. Gangs and organizations such as the Serbian mafia were, and still are, involved in smuggling, arms trafficking, drug trafficking, protection racket, and illegal gambling. Assassinations have historically triggered fits, and in 2000 an open clan war erupted in which numerous key mafia bosses were killed. In the same year, a total of €841 million was made in illegal profits in Serbia. Tensions from below pull on the machine blocks, and invisible strings suspend new criminal blocks from existing ones. Some of the key criminals have been recruited into official state security forces and have been protected in return for political favors. There are various notable cases demonstrating the influence of clans and gangs on politics. For example, former Serbian President Ivan Stambolic was abducted and killed by the Zeman clan in 2000, just before an election. His remains were found 3 years later. In the machine, this is explored through the connection of invisible strings between the forces which suspend the criminal gangs and the top-down structures. Elastics are also used to show the connections between top and bottom forces. Under motion, this encourages blocks to collide and trigger moments of devastation. Day 4. Novi Beograd. Novi Beograd, or New Belgrade, is the most populous municipality of Belgrade and the second most populous municipality of Serbia, with around 212,000 inhabitants. Its construction began in 1948 on what was previously swampland, and through the laborious work of hundreds of thousands of engineers, construction professionals, volunteers, and youth groups, the blocks began to take form. Today, New Belgrade is divided into 72 blocks of concrete, aesthetically and ideologically inspired by Le Corbusier principles, highly technological at the time, though poured by hand and transported by horse carriage. Despite having no real forest, its vast parks make it the greenest area of Belgrade. Within the machine is hung a more geometric Novi Beograd block. This block is modern and stylish. Its strength comes from the thicker ropes which hold it from below. The people who constructed and lived within it in the socialist ideology in which it was born. From the top, elastics keep it suspended. The involvement of political influence on the area's formation is far less than might be the common practice in the UK, for example.
About the characters that people know who they're working with. Certain characters will be prompted to find each other. I don't think it's a duck. Yeah, you're in
Well, does it say you have to? Does it say you have to collect?